Welcome to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the place where you can learn how to create a dental practice and a business life that you love. Listen in with Dr. David Moffet as he interviews successful entrepreneurs and successful business people and successful dentists as they share their business successes, their stories, and their breakthrough ideas, sharing pearls of wisdom that you can take back to your practice and implement immediately so that you can have that great practice with more patients, higher profits, and less stress. This is the podcast where great dental practices meet with successful business processes. Thanks for tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast, the podcast where thought leaders, industry experts, and thriving practice owners reveal their very best tips, tools, and strategies that will help you grow your dental practice faster. Now, here's your host, Dr. David Moffet.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. David Moffet. As you know, I'm in Burrowang, New South Wales. It is 10:30 in the morning here on Wednesday morning, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the studio, all the way from Scottsdale, Arizona, Gary Takacs, who is affectionately known as the Podfather, and he'll tell you why, but Gary was the initial first dental podcaster way back in 2011. He's had more than 700 episodes, weekly episodes of his podcast in that time. I've been a guest on Gary's podcast twice, so it gives me great pleasure to welcome Gary to the Ultimate Dental Podcast studio. Gary, welcome.
Well, David, the honor is all mine. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm excited to have this chat with you and to share some thoughts with your listeners. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Now, Gary, what time is it in Arizona? Because isn't Arizona, it's mountain time, isn't it?
Well, Arizona is odd because half of the year we're Pacific time and half of the year we're mountain time. So we never change our clocks. So our clocks never go to daylight savings time. We use the natural time year round. So right now, as we're recording this, it's 5:30 in the evening the day before you. It's 5:30 in the evening on Tuesday evening, and you're out there on Wednesday morning already.
Now, Gary, I'm going to ask you why Arizona. Now, I understand Alaska doesn't have daylight saving time because in summer it's daylight 24 hours a day up there.
Right.
But why is Arizona different from the rest of the other 48 states down? Like even Hawaii has daylight saving time.
Well, the simple reason is that in the summer, we don't need more daylight hours. We're in the desert and it's a rather extreme environment. But I actually think years ago, they felt like politically it was a better for the population to not change the clocks. And they just decided to be the rebel, in the states, and we never change ours. I think maybe they thought that other states would follow suit, but no, it never happened. It's just us.
Well, to put it in perspective, down here in Australia, when we go to our summertime, which is a 6-month period, and I think yours is 7 and a bit months, but it's a 6-month period, we have one East Coast state which doesn't, and then we have a central time, which is only half an hour different. So the state, there's only two. There's a territory and a state in the centre, and the territory doesn't, but the state does. So the state actually moves ahead of, South Australia moves ahead of Queensland, which is really weird. And then we got Western Australia, and they're an island of their own because they never change. And so they actually fall a further hour behind. They're already 2 hours behind. So in summertime, they fall 3 hours behind. And that's
just keep everyone in a state of confusion. I think that's a good plan.
I think really, Gary, the answer is like China. China has one time zone. The whole width of China is a one time zone.
That's
and
crazy.
So the kids on the East Coast, they get up with the sun, and the kids on the West Coast, they get up on the western side, they get up in the dark, but they don't have to change their clocks from one side to another.
That is a massive, massive country to be on one time zone. I had the privilege of speaking in China. I spoke in Shanghai a number of years ago, and it was one of the highlights in my speaking career.
Were you translated? Of course you must have been.
So it was rather interesting. Here was my assignment. I was assigned to introduce whitening to China. Whitening, teeth whitening to China. Now, and it was a fascinating assignment because I think Philips, we all know Philips, it's Philips Zoom today. They wanted to introduce whitening to China because you've got 1.4 billion people and they all drink tea. And unfortunately, there's a pretty high incident of cigarette smoking in China still. And so between the staining of the tea with the tea and the staining of cigarette smoke, there was a big market for whitening. And I had a big theater in Shanghai, and I was working with the equivalent of the president of the Chinese Dental Association, a wonderful, wonderful gentleman, spoke just impeccable English. And he called me a day before the event. I was in Shanghai already, and he said, we've sold out the theater where you'll be speaking, and there's a lot of dentists who would like to experience your course. Would it be okay if we broadcast it in real time, over the internet, if we broadcast it live in real time? Because, China is a huge country. We can't fit any more in your theater. Lots of folks would like to attend. And I said, I don't even need to ask Phillips if that'd be okay. The answer is yes. But now it made the translation different, David, because if you've spoken internationally, as I have, they'll provide you with translators. I usually get 2 simultaneous translators. So when I'm speaking, there'll be 2 simultaneous translators in a soundproof room, and they listen to me, and then they speak in the native tongue. I lectured in Germany rather recently, and you can always tell who's listening to it in English because they're not wearing headphones. The ones that are listening to it in the audience that are wearing headphones are listening to it, in this case, in German. But now this is video. This is video. This isn't just, the audio. This is video. So I had this wonderful translator. She was just one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. And I said, how long can you go word for word and translate for me as you're taking your notes, and then we'll then speak? She said 5 minutes. Imagine that, David, going 5 minutes and being able to translate it word for word. She did her undergraduate at Harvard, did graduate school in England, and now was back in her native China. And she spoke Mandarin, among other dialects, but said she'd go 5 minutes. I said, well, how about if I make it easy for you? How about if I make every slide 45 seconds? And she just smiled at me. She said, that would be like I'm not even working. I said, well, we'll do it that way. And so I built every slide to be 45 seconds. And then I would speak, in English. The audience would listen to it mostly in English. And then she would translate. And it was a fascinating experience. Finished the lecture. I asked the president of the Chinese Dental Association, I said, do you have any data on how many listeners you had? How many viewers and listeners? He said, at the peak point of our attendance, you had 92,000 in attendance. And he said that makes it the largest dental meeting ever held in China. And I felt pretty good about that.
Goodness, Gary, what an event! 92,000 people. I thought you were going to tell me that people were laughing at different points because they were laughing at the translator's time.
Well, there was a time lag because those that were listening to it in English would laugh in real time. And then 45 seconds later, we'd get a second wave of laughter. The ones who were interested, the ones who were listening to it in Mandarin. It was fascinating.
I found that watching a movie in a cinema with English subtitles, a movie that was in French, and people were laughing at different times to me, and because I didn't know French, so
you didn't know. As I was prepping for this, the president of the Chinese Dental Association was very helpful, and I asked him. I said, can you give me an idea of what is the status of dental care in China? He said, well, it's really all over the map, Gary. He said, if you get out into some very, very remote villages, dentistry might be some gentleman on the street with a pair of rusty pliers. But you go to any major city, it's as progressive as anywhere in the world. And that's certainly what I experienced, in Shanghai. Very, very progressive, very interested in advancement, very advanced, very, very much interested in science. It was just a wonderful experience.
That's lovely. And I've been to visit some of the offshore Chinese-based dental laboratories and found them very clean, very well structured, and in fact, the tracking of metals in those days, really good. So if they ever, and they never had, but if they ever found an impurity, they would know exactly where those impurities went in terms of crowns and castings and things like that. Gary, let's get back to the intro and your history of podcasting. You were the first ever dental podcast. Were you coaching dentists at that time when you
Yeah,
decided to do it?
I've been in the dental profession for 45 years, going back to 1980. I started my own dental consulting firm, dental coaching firm in 1989. But yeah, I'd been coaching for some time. I'm a nerd, David. I don't mind admitting that. I wear my nerd badge with honor. I love technology. And I'd been listening to podcasts as podcasts were kind of coming around in 2010, 2011. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to create a dental podcast? I'd bring guests on and we'd simply talk about things that we're passionate about in dentistry. And it was simply the interest in technology combined with, I've got a wonderful electronic Rolodex with people like Dr. David Moffet in it, where I thought I could contact some people and they'd be willing to come on the podcast. And it just took off from there. And it was just a wonderful kind of a passion project for me. It was a way that I thought I could share useful information in a way that was very convenient for dentists to listen to. And if you go back to 2011, it was not easy to listen to a podcast. Forget about creating one, but listening to one because you had to download it onto a computer. You then had to have bridging software that would then bridge it over to an MP3 player. You could finally load it to an MP3 player, and then you could listen to it. But today, we have podcast apps, we have Android apps, we have Apple apps. You can just press a button and there it is. And we didn't have that in 2011.
Yeah, wow, that sounds like the Stone Age, Gary. But
it was in some ways.
I think you're the standard for dental podcasts, because there's been plenty that have come and gone in that time, and you're still going. Every week a podcast episode comes out.
We haven't missed an episode. We're at something like 720 consecutive weeks. I had a mentor on the technical side of podcasting. I had a mentor when I started, and he shared with me some words of wisdom that stuck. He said, Gary, a couple things you want to do. Obviously, you have to have interesting content. You have to have interesting guests. But secondly, consistency is something people appreciate. So make a decision about what your frequency is going to be and stick with it. And so I decided I would publish a weekly podcast. Initially, it was about an hour in length. I called it a commuter podcast. When you think about how much time people spend driving, maybe it's different in Australia, but here in the US, I'd say most dentists probably have about a 30-minute commute in the morning and maybe a 30-minute return commute in the afternoon. And they could listen to it in, the morning and afternoon commute. I shortened it a little bit because people's attention span got shorter. Have you noticed that, David?
Yes, Gary.
People's attention. So today it's about a 40 to 45-minute podcast by design, but we never missed. I followed my mentor's advice and decided to be consistent, and it's certainly something that helped.
Yeah, well, I think I'm a late starter in the podcast field. After a lot of pushing from people to do it, I finally got around to bridging the technology. And you asked me, and we've been chatting for an hour and a half before we hit the record button.
We have some big catching up to do.
But you asked me about Riverside, which I chose as a result of being interviewed on Riverside by someone, and then them telling me the advantages of the editing side of Riverside and being able to present that to somebody who then uploads it. And that was simply somebody offshore I found through Fiverr, and working with him to get things correct and done. And we're now very much on the same page. I think there's one issue. Sometimes I like a long title, and one of the platforms, you have to have a 100 character title. So sometimes he sends me a message, says, "Can you shorten this title?" Because English is his second language. So I have to shorten it. Just
there you go.
Change it. But
I love what you're doing, David. You're a wonderful voice in dentistry. We've had the chance to spend time together face to face, when on some of your trips to the U.S. And I love your perspective. I love what you're doing. You have the clinical background as a dentist, but also now on the coaching side, and you bring a wonderful perspective to your audience for sure.
Well, thank you, Gary. And I think one of my favorite podcast interviews, and you'll know this story. I had intended this person to be my first guest, but he was ill. And so we finally got around to recording him in November. And sadly, he passed away in February this year, Robert Pick. Yeah. And so Bob and I were great buddies. Never met in person, but I could pick up the phone and give him a call. And
Bob was definitely a kindred spirit, wonderful perspective. He's deeply missed for sure.
Very much so, very much so. And they say, you remember the things in your life, like where were you when 9/11 hit? Where were you when you heard that John Lennon died? And where was I when I I saw the Facebook message that Bob Pick had passed away. I know exactly where I was.
He's one of the many reasons why I'm so passionate about our profession. Now, there are some amazing people in dentistry that are just givers. They're all about the rising tide raises all boats. They're people you can talk to off the record, on the record. They'll be supportive. They'll direct you. They'll provide, they'll share everything they know with you. And Bob was certainly one of those spirits for sure.
His key phrase, which I often quote to my clients, is, ethics and excellence always. You've got to practice excellent dentistry, but you've got to have excellent ethics as well.
Not a bad motto for anybody to live by.
Yes.
But certainly dental professionals for sure.
Yeah. Sadly missed, but again, it was great. And he never actually podcast. He just did Facebook Lives, and hopefully they're still out there. Somebody's captured them.
They'll be out there, I think, for eternity. There's a whole group of people that want to keep, his memory alive.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, Gary, so you got into dentistry as a non-dentist by choice. That makes you kind of unique because, as one of my customer service mentors tells me, dentistry is a grudge buy. It's like tires. You get told you need new tires. You say, "Can't I get another 500 miles out of these?" Right. It just only worn on the inside. My wife will drive slowly with the kids, taking them to school. All the things that you should. It's just like they're carrying valuable cargo. And dentistry is the same. Any excuse to not go to the dentist. Nobody wakes up on a Monday morning and says, "Oh, I still got $500 over from the weekend. I'm going to go down to the dentist and see what I can buy." It doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
You chose to get into that, not only as somebody doing, because then you've got to deal with dentists, and I have a theory about that as well, but you have to manage dentists and help them manage patients. What was your second choice?
Well, what drew me into it, David, is I quickly realized that in dentistry, we have the opportunity to change people's lives every day. It could be something you do clinically. You could take a patient that has some very compromised dentition, and maybe as a result of that, they're reserved, they don't smile, and you provide this gorgeous, healthy smile, and the person just blossoms. And it doesn't have to be anything as sophisticated as that. It could be something behavioral. Maybe just someone needs someone to listen to them. And maybe you as the dentist are that kind, compassionate set of ears that provided the listening that someone needed that day. But we truly have the ability to change people's lives every day. Doctors and team members have the ability to do that. And of course, we don't normally think of dentistry as life-saving. We think of our colleagues in the emergency room at the hospital do the life-saving. But actually, there's many ways that dentistry can be life-saving today. When you think about oral cancer screening and oral cancer diagnosis, we talk about things like obstructive sleep apnea, where the incident of apneic incidence is much more prominent in the population than we know. And there's just many ways that dentistry can not only be life-changing, but life-saving.
It's really important. And I'm glad you mentioned oral cancer and sleep. I remember one of those stupid moments, which I overcame when another dentist told me back in the early 2000s, sleep dentistry is the future. I go, really? But then 2007, I learned about sleep dentistry and started helping people, who were waking up with huge migraines and fixing those, and then realizing about people with sleep apnea and being able to help those people. But the oral cancer is another one, Gary, and sadly, a lot of dentists are, I hope I never see oral cancer in my practice. And if they're not screening, that's going to be life-changing for them. If one of their patients says, "Hey, I've been going to you for 10 years. Why didn't you see this? Because now I'm stage 4 and I'm gone."
I have the privilege of doing some guest lecturing at dental schools here in the U.S., and I'm speaking to dental students, and I have a segment of that where I talk about oral cancer screening, and I tell them, because, they're at the very beginning of their career, I say that statistically, each one of you in this room this is statistics here in the U.S., will identify 22 cases of oral cancer in your career. Will identify, not just screen for, but, identify oral cancer. And if you can catch that at early stage 1, the treatment success is very high. And of course, as it progresses through the different stages, the treatment success goes down geometrically. So get serious about your screening, because you could have the opportunity to save 22 lives.
Yeah, well, that's huge because I can remember being told back in 1990 that by another dentist, he said, within your dental practicing life, you may see one.
It's changed. And the incident of oral cancer, as you know, David, the incident of oral cancer is going up significantly in the population. There was a time, if you're a certain age, that the way we were trained to screen for it was a very narrow screening. It was typically male, typically moderate to heavy alcohol, often tobacco use as well. Those are the kind of things we were looking for. But in fact, today the incident is much wider. Part of that is due to a particular strain of HPV
Yes.
that is creating the radical increase. So today, that person could just as likely be a young female that no alcohol, either very moderate alcohol consumption or none. So we need to screen everybody.
Well, we do. And if we can find an early detection that is there, and these are out there, Gary,
They're
but
there.
they're not getting promoted, saliva markers,
Right.
if we can help that get into more dental practices, trouble is a lot of dentists don't want to find these in their patients because their patients disappear while they have the cancer treatment. Why would I find that? I don't get to treat my patient while I'm saving their life or trying to save their life.
Well, I think we need to think more a big picture with our
We
patients.
do, but sadly, sometimes the dental profession doesn't think for the long term. They only think for the short term.
Play the long game. Play the long game. My grandmother had a big influence in raising me. And I've had the privilege of meeting some very, very, very intelligent people in my career. And I think that my grandmother, who had an 8th grade education formally, may have been one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my life. But she taught me to play the long game. And she was right.
Yeah, I think for sure. So, Gary, 45 years of coaching dentists. Now, I also saw something somewhere as to how many dental practices or dentists that you've actually lectured. What you've got a handle on that number? How big is that?
It's a crazy number. I had the opportunity to speak fairly early in my career, and it was something I really enjoyed doing. So I've spoken at just about every dental conference in North America, and in many cases had the opportunity to be the keynote, either the opening keynote or the closing keynote speaker at the major conferences throughout North America. Somewhere I got invited to speak internationally, and it sort of took off from there. And it's been a passion of mine. It's wonderful meeting dentists all over the world. As you know, you get the privilege of doing that. And, it's really a wonderful experience. There's a lot of commonality, not always language is in common, but there's a lot of commonality in values, in passion for our profession. So it's been a lot of fun, but I've got a crazy number of hours from the podium, that's for sure.
The thing about being a dental coach, and it's something that we were discussing beforehand. I've come from the operatory to dental coaching, and you've come from a business side to dental coaching. And one of the things that we know is common in dental coaching is that your clients don't do everything that you tell them to.
That's for sure.
And sometimes you don't find out that they've chosen not to take your advice until months down the track when, why aren't you doing that? Oh, we just decided we weren't going to do that at that time. And of course, it's a domino effect that we find the last domino, and then we've got to backtrack and say, when we fix this back up here, it fixes everything that leads to the problem that is now your disaster. And so it's crazy. So with that in mind as a coach, and knowing that, when you have great success as a coach, which we do, you also have frustrations, you then decided to become a practice owner as well late in your coaching career. And I think as we spoke when you were telling me this story, you hit 2 winners because you got a great dentist to start off the practice that you started to own, and then you got a great associate come in as well. So that's like a 1 in 20 and another 1 in 20. So it's a 1 in 400 start. But tell us that story. Tell my listeners that story about how you decided to do that, knowing that you could have also ended up with another headache.
Very different. In 2007, I learned that in Arizona, of course, where I live, you don't have to be a dentist to own a practice. It's a rather unusual kind of loophole, but you do not have to be a dentist. And so I decided I wanted to own a practice because I wanted to have a test kitchen, a learning and teaching laboratory where I could test concepts out. And then I could share with my audiences when I was speaking, with my clients when I'm coaching, what worked and what didn't work. I partnered with, I could have owned the practice by myself, but I chose to partner with a young dentist because I wanted the dentist to have skin in the game. And we partnered together in a 50-50 partnership. Dr. Paul Nielsen, he's a 2005 graduate of the University of Washington School of Dentistry. We spent some time together, and he was looking for, he had been out of dental school for 2 years, had been working in 3 different associateships. Each one was 2 days a week. He was working 6 days a week, honing his hand speed, his range of services, and learning about the things in dentistry that weren't clinical. And he decided he wanted to own a practice. I was either going to find a practice and then to buy and then go find a dentist to partner with, or I was going to find a dentist partner and we'd buy a practice together. And in this case, it was the latter. He had commissioned my services to help him find a practice to buy. And as I was getting to know him, I quickly understood that our values matched up just perfectly. He's a family guy. Ironically, we both have 4 kids. Mine are adults. I have 3 daughters and a son. He did the reverse, 3 sons and a daughter. But our values matched up. He was a man of integrity. He was a role model, an Eagle Scout. We felt like there was a great match. And of course, that was confirmed in our partnership. 2013, we hired an associate doc. We grew the practice to be large enough to include a second doc. We hired an associate doc who became a partner 2 years later in 2015. And he also fit us, the 3 of us thought the same. And it was a very, very fortunate partnership. Partnerships don't always go that way, as you know, David. In this case, it was born of mutual respect. We didn't always agree, but we would talk amongst each other. And we had a protocol where any big decisions in the practice needed to be unanimous. And we had a protocol to work through those. And if we weren't unanimous in the first vote, then we would talk with one another and find out what the other person's perspective was. And if we couldn't come down to an agreement, by the way, we created a tiebreaker. And the tiebreaker was, initially it was Paul and I, and at any given point, it could have been 50-50. And I said, let's come up with the tiebreaker. And the tiebreaker is we followed the basketball change of possession rule. And what I said was, first of all, we went to our attorney to draw up a contract on, what do we do if we don't agree? And it was like 80 pages of legal, psychobabble that we said, no, we're not going to do that. So I said, Paul, how about this? If we can't come to an agreement, you get the first vote. I said, we'll do age before wisdom. He was younger. Said, we'll go age before wisdom. You get the first vote. We can't come to agreement. You decide. And then the next vote, it becomes mine. Well, in our 8 years of 50-50 partnership, the possession never changed from Paul. He had it the entire time. And then when we added Tim, we kept that same rule. We gave Tim the possession and we said, okay, Tim, if we can't agree unanimously, then you decide. And then it goes to Paul and then it goes to me. Well, in the rest of our partnership, it never changed hands. And that was a function of mutual respect, being thoughtful about the other person's perspective and playing the long game.
So you never really had to go down to the tiebreaker?
Never, not once.
Yeah, because I could have solved your 80-page document, and I think this would work better than soccer penalty shootout.
Yes.
And that is scissors, paper, rock.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, we could have done that.
Best of 5. And that would, like, Gary, I forget which year it was, but Australia used to have to qualify for the World Cup by winning its Oceania division and then playing, it's a long time ago, the team that came 5th in South America and then going in. So one year we went to Uruguay and we had a draw, and then we came over here and we had another draw, and so we had a penalty shootout over here. Well, why didn't they just send the goalies to each do a video link, and it would be so...
I like your rock, paper, scissor game. It makes as much sense as anything else.
It is. Instead of paying extra time in NFL as well, just get the 2 captains there, rock, paper, scissors, done.
There you go.
And you can't, you can't challenge it.
Yeah.
It's black and white.
I have to tell you, David, I thought owning a practice would provide me a great experience of having that learning and teaching laboratory. And I have to tell you, it massively exceeded my expectations in every way. Leading a team, creating, I talk about, what does it mean to have a team approach? And that, to me, that's where everybody's in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. I've shared that with some clients over the years. Said, what does it mean to have team synergy? And what does that mean? I said, well, it means when everyone's in the same boat, rowing together, in the same direction. And I've had doctors tell me, I've got some that aren't even in the boat. They're over here swimming some other way. And we talk about that. And it was a very, very fertile learning and teaching laboratory. I wouldn't want to do what I do as a coach today without having had that experience as a practice owner. A fascinating experience. And we got to create our own model of practice that fit our goals, our objectives. We weathered a couple recessions in there, 07 and 08 and 09 here in the United States, we call the Great Recession. Well, we had just become practice owners, and that was a wake-up call. And we weathered that, very well. We always wanted to grow, and the growth was always framed around we wanted to help more people enjoy the benefits of great oral health. We were able to recruit a fantastic team and continually work and develop our team. And it really did become a world-class practice. And I'm very grateful for my partners, Dr. Paul, Dr. Tim, as being really fantastic partners in every way I could describe them.
Now, you mentioned in the discussion beforehand that you had you also organized a get-out clause or in your contract. So, and you being slightly older than the other two,
well,
you felt that...
You're being kind, David. It was a buy-sell agreement that was geared towards me.
Yes.
I'm actually old enough to be Paul, Dr. Paul's father. Our oldest daughter is Paul's age. So I say that not just, as a coincidence. No, I could be Paul's dad. So the buy-sell agreement was geared towards me. I'd be the one that would hit the door first. In 2022, I went to Paul and Tim and said, hey guys, if now is a good time for you, it might be a good time to exercise the buy-sell. I'd like to spend this next season of my career really focusing on the coaching side and helping as many dentists as possible develop a thriving practice. And it turned out to be good timing for them. So I exited as a partner in 2022, but our daughter's their office manager. They're a client. They're my dentist. So it's still a big part of my heart, but I'm no longer an equity partner there. But that period of time, it was 15 years, as a principal in that practice was very, very important in my thinking in terms of coaching. And I thought I knew some things ahead of time. I jokingly say that I thought I knew about cancellation and no-shows, and then I got a PhD in cancellation and no-shows, among many other examples.
Well, the lessons that I learned as a practice owner and operator for 28 years and 35 years as a dentist helped me in coaching. And you said too...
You wouldn't learn all of that academically, would you?
You don't learn any of it, and they're still not teaching it academically, Gary. But you also said that financially it was a good investment in that practice.
Very much so.
Was it 13 times your investment? Is that...
Well, 13x, we grew that practice 13x over that time period, 13 times the size. And go ahead and do the financial correlation to realize that. Yeah, it was... But it was built on a solid philosophy. We worked hard. We developed our team. We expanded our range of services. If I think about the practice foundation was everyday general dentistry and a big, strong hygiene department as the foundation. And then over time, we curated 6 very specific high-value services that became part of that practice based on the things our doctors like to do, things like cosmetic dentistry, things like placing implants, things like complex restorative dentistry. And it became, a really wonderful practice that we mastered marketing along the way, learned how to attract quality new patients. And it did turn out to be a very good investment and a bit of a legacy practice in terms of what it's doing in terms of helping our team members, helping our patients, and of course the principals as well.
Well, I think one of the important things that you've learned, and one of my coaches says this often, and he says, if you've done it yourself and you can teach it and show that it works for somebody else, then when somebody else can't get it right, they only got to look in the mirror to see where the answer is. Because if you've done it and other people have been able to do it, then everybody should be able to do it. They've just got to learn the behaviors to do it or do the behaviors that you're teaching.
Can I give you an example of that, David?
Yeah, sure.
When Paul was a solo dentist, he was a 4-day-a-week dentist. He worked Monday through Thursday. And when we added Dr. Tim as the second dentist, one of the things I wanted to do was help create an effective work-life balance for them. Because I feel like one of the crises that exists today in dentistry is throughout the world, there are not a lot of dentists that can honestly say they have an effective work-life balance. So when we added Dr. Tim, we decided that we would experiment with the 3-day doctor week, that Paul would work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Tim would work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The hours of the practice were 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. patient hours, Monday through Thursday, and then 7 to 2 on Friday, a little shorter day on Friday. And so we went to the 3-day work week for Paul and Tim. So Paul worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tim was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Because I felt with a 3-day work week, they could have a better chance at achieving effective work-life balance. The team liked those hours too. It worked for our team because we had some team members that needed more work hours. And now they could get as many as 40 hours a week if they wanted. Most of our team works 4 days a week by choice, their choice. And that works fine because they can easily get those 4 days across the 5. And then we have, a couple of team members that the 3-day work week works fine. So we experimented with that. And the thing we wanted to do, David, if you can imagine this, is I wanted Paul and Paul wanted himself to produce just as much working 3 days a week as when he was working 4. And sure enough, we were able to do that. We were able to do that through a combination of things, more disciplined scheduling. So we were more disciplined in the scheduling. You know a little bit about that. And then also we did it through the ability to expand his higher value services. He could push some things downhill to Dr. Tim. It could free up more time to Dr. Paul to do more higher value services. When we added the third doctor, we did the same thing. And we put the third doctor on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So all 3 doctors have the benefit of 4-day weekend one way or another, depending on, how your work week was, but you have a 4-day weekend. And now we've got a schedule that works well for the team. And now I can model that and share that with clients. Say it's not mutually, it is possible to have a world-class practice and an effective work-life balance. They're not mutually exclusive. So in other words, you don't have to give up one to get the other. And we can say, we've done it. We'll show you. Let me show you how it's done. And that's a passion project of mine because I really feel like if you have a successful practice financially, at the expense of your family, at the expense of your relationship with your kids, with your spouse, your hobbies, your interests, your fitness, then it's not success. We need to really have all of it. And pardon me for wanting all of it, but I want to have a world-class practice and an effective work-life balance.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful thing for you to say that, Gary. I used to work 4 days a week, 2 and 2. So it was Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And
with a middle day off.
Middle day off to play golf and then played golf on Saturdays as well. And I changed that towards the end of my working career because I changed golf clubs and the new golf club played middle of the week Thursdays. And that was actually quite interesting. So I worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So Wednesday night, Jane and I would go on date night. It was kind of like the end of the week because I really had a golf the next day and then a day of work and then I
back on the golf course on Saturday.
So the Friday wasn't really, I wasn't anticipating, because we know some dentists who, on Sunday afternoon, 2:00, you can set your watch to them because they start getting nervous about Monday morning's dentistry. Yeah. And I never had that experience, but the fact of getting to Wednesday night and then being able to go out on date night, which we thoroughly enjoyed. And, usually it was a business meeting anyway. By that time, Jane was working in the office as well,
right.
as office manager. And so that's where I got my PhD in phone answering because she then said, this can't go on. You just can't have this and it can be fixed. And so we worked on that. So the point is that if you've done it yourself and you can duplicate it, it's an easy system to follow. This coach says it's following the green line. People just want to know what the success is. Just follow the green line. The green line works. When you get out of the boat and you start swimming in the wrong direction and you wonder why you're not getting any closer to where you're meant to be going, get back in the boat because the boat's the one that's going there. So it's a wonderful lesson it's a simple lesson in business. And that I think it's something that I learned from outside of dentistry that if you can find I can never run 100 meters in under 10 seconds. I'm physically impossible for me to do that. But in business, if you can learn skills or you can find somebody who's got those skills who can work for you, you can achieve great success.
You really can. Can I share with you my personal motivation for helping the doctors achieve work-life balance?
Please.
The reality is that I did not have an effective work-life balance in my own life most of my career. Now, I started my own consulting firm in 1989. So I could blame my boss. Wait a minute, that'd be me. So for most of my career, I was an in-office coach. I would travel 46 weeks of the year. I'd leave Monday morning, or I called it dark 30 flight on Monday morning. And I'd travel around the country and visit clients. And then if I wasn't speaking at a conference on Friday, I'd come home, or Saturday, I'd come home Friday night. If I was speaking at a conference, which is at least 30 Saturdays a year, then I'd come home Sunday night and do it all again, Monday morning. And I'll tell you what it felt like. This isn't how it happened, but this is what it felt like. we have, as I mentioned, we have 4 adult kids. We have 3 daughters and a son. And it felt like our youngest daughter was born, and I blinked my eyes, and then I'm driving her off to college. That's what it felt like. It didn't happen that way, but that is how it felt. And I remember driving her home, driving myself home after dropping her off. She was the last of the 4 kids, and we're now becoming empty nesters. And I'm thinking, if I don't start making it a priority to have work-life balance myself, then I'm never going to do it. And it was that motivation that caused me to really focus on that for my clients and for Dr. Paul and Dr. Tim and Dr. Jared, because I felt like I can't go back and redo mine. I have regrets around that. I don't mind admitting that. I have regrets around that. I could have done it. I could have created work-life balance sooner, but I didn't. And I've got regrets around that. But I can't go back and change my history, but I can help them and help my clients. And it's a real passion project of mine because I truly do feel that they are not mutually exclusive. You can have them both, and we proved that. And now it's just a matter of following the recipe.
I think in the profession of dentistry, Gary, the biggest tragedy that I see is people, and especially in the US, they spend a lot of money getting a degree and they've got a debt associated with that. And then they spend a lot of money investing in an office and they've got a debt associated with that. And then they work 40 years of their life. And then when it's time to retire, they haven't accumulated enough wealth to live comfortably in retirement. So they're relying on the sale of their office, the sale of their home, and downsizing to something smaller. And that's not really what I see as retirement. You and I were both talking about, staying in the home that we love and making that home built for retirement, maybe
Right.
slightly bigger, but
We were both on, coincidentally on the same journey and didn't know it.
well, and we found that we're born within 4 weeks of each other
That's right.
as well. We could be twins.
Oh,
we could have been stolen at birth.
You'd be the better looking one.
It's funny because actually we've got a friend in coaching who is also born between our birthdays, Catherine Eitel.
Oh, yes. Catherine and I are very, very, very dear friends. Her and Tom are great friends of ours. Her and her husband, Tom, are great friends. And she was right between our birthdays, yours and mine.
She's a week older than me. I always
she's a week older than you. That's right.
Yeah. I send her a message. I say, I hope I look as good as you when I'm your age. It's only another week. But,
that's right.
Yeah. So, but we're on that similar journey. But the tragedy is that what sort of a life is it if you grind for 40 years and then you've got nothing to show for it? And that's 95% of dentists. And I put it down to a couple of things, Gary, and these are simple life lessons not associated with dentistry, is that a similar statistic is that 97% of people don't write down their goals and read them. All right. And then the fact is that it's not just in dentistry, 1% of people end up wealthy, 4% of people end up well-to-do, and then the rest are reliant on the government or someone else to keep them wealthy, and then some are dead at age 65. And that's a frightening statistic. And we have the opportunity. I was told by a patient in 1983, he said to me, and I was an associate dentist, he said to me, I heard that dentistry is the last bastion of free enterprise. And owning a dental office is that last bastion. It gives you the opportunity, as you've set up for Tim and the others, is that they can work 3 days and have 4 days off. And you can do that. If you own a bakery, it's 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, think about what other, there are some other exceptions, but what career could you work 3 days a week and be compensated very handsomely, over that 3-day period? It's hard work. Let's not deny that. Dentistry, is hard work. You've got to deal with not only the clinical delivery of the dentistry, but the patient, behaviors and neuroses and everything that goes along with it. It's challenging, but it's pretty special to work 3 days a week, and they really can be very productive. I'm a believer that our doctors come to work ready to work because they've been able to recharge their batteries, in the 4 days that they're not working, and it really creates a wonderful balance. And I think a long, fruitful career by choice can be done that way. It's really by design. It's the idea of doing it by design rather than by accident.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess my office grew considerably while I was doing it, and a lot of the times some of the things were experimental. I learned that if I put on extra staff, extra team members, my practice grew quickly, whereas some dentists will wait for their practice to grow before they put on the team member.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, it's a chicken and egg discussion. What comes first? And I've always invested in our team. We have the benefit of typically long-term retention that we attract and keep quality team members, and that they're a critically important part of the practice. I think of them as my work family, and they really are that. And when they understand what our values are, how we want to take care of patients. My two areas of expertise are the business side of dentistry, but also the behavioral side of dentistry, the people side of dentistry. And I've had some wonderful mentors on the behavioral side of dentistry, including Dr. L.D. Pankey. I'm on faculty at the Pankey Institute in Key Biscayne, Florida, where I teach the business and behavioral parts of their curriculum. And I had the privilege of meeting Dr. Pankey very early in his career, or very early in my career, very late in his career. We were born on the same day, little coincidence. We share a birthday. He was born obviously much earlier than me, but he impressed upon me the importance of the behavioral side of dentistry. As Dr. Pankey is known by many as the father of modern day restorative dentistry. And he knew that if he didn't really connect with his patients, he was never going to get to do all that exquisite restorative dentistry if he didn't connect with them.
Yeah. It's something that you have to, and behavior is learnt, Gary. I often tell my clients, I've yet to find a baby born that can speak English at birth. I've yet to find a baby born holding a handpiece, and I've yet to find a baby born holding a telephone. So these behaviors are all learnable, and they're also things that you can choose not to learn. But when you learn how to use and master these things, life changes. And speaking and relationships is learnable. It's My Fair Lady all over again.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, dentistry, one of my other mentors, Dr. Omer Reed, you might remember that name.
I spoke with Omer, yeah.
Dr. Reed always told me, he said, Gary, remember, dentistry's a people game. He's right. Yes, you do have to have the clinical delivery. Yes, you have to master clinical excellence, but it's also a people game because the interaction that you do with your patients will have a lot, you and your team, it's not just you, it's your team too, they can be extensions of you, will have a lot to do with a patient's receptivity to your recommendations. And there's no shortage of how much we can learn lifelong pursuit of mastering the behavioral side of dentistry. It can literally be a lifelong hobby, a lifelong passion.
Yeah, I got to meet Omer late in his life, and he was one who told me that I think in the US at age 65, 95% of dentists can't afford to retire because they haven't replaced their dental income with a passive income.
Yeah, actually, today it's only slightly changed for the worse. Today, there's data that says that only 3% of the dentists in the United States can retire at age 65 and not reduce their lifestyle. 3%. That statistic makes me sad because you deserve better than that. You deserve better than that. Now, granted, there could be some reasons, some decisions that were made that weren't the best decisions and so on, but I want to change that. I believe dentists deserve to be able to retire with dignity. Omer, I met him early in my career. I was very fortunate. I met him in 1982. And he was a wonderful mentor, taught me so many things about the behavioral side of dentistry, was an absolute master at connecting with people. When you were in his chair as a patient, which I was, you would feel like there was nobody else in the entire building. It was just you and him. And at that time, he had 2 associate dentists and 5 hygienists. So you can imagine the operation. And as a dentist, David, you're able to see me on video because we're doing this in a video chat. But how long do veneers last? If someone does veneers, how long should veneers last? Lab fabricated porcelain veneers.
Gary, if they're done well, they should last forever because they should stay on. The porcelain should be strong enough that they don't fracture. And maybe some gingival recession might expose a root surface, needing them to be replaced. But
well, I'll smile at you. 7, 8, 9. Well, I'll use the U.S. tooth numbering system. Does Australia use the international system?
We use the international system, not the American.
Okay, so you'll have to translate this. Translate 7, 8, 9, and 10 to the international system.
It is 1. It is 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2.
So now everyone knows what I'm talking about. I had a diastema between my centrals. You couldn't quite drive a truck through there. Well, maybe a mini truck. And then I had little tiny peg laterals. Dr. Reed did these veneers in 1986.
Wonderful.
38 years ago. at the time that we're recording, 37 years ago at the time that we're recording this.
Fantastic. 19 when? 86?
1886, 87, excuse me,
Yeah.
87.
Yeah, I've got a gold crown done up here in 1993, and it only failed because the cement failed. My current dentist re-cemented it maybe 8 or 9 years ago with a bonded cement instead. Yeah, good dentistry should last forever. Trouble is, we can't follow patients around once we've done the dentistry and they're in the grocery store buying chocolates, ice cream. Even my dad, he's not a dentist. My dad, he would have an apple before he went to bed and then not brush his teeth. So he's got all that citric acid and the sugar in there. Dad, no.
So as we were talking about this, and I was Dr. Reed's patient, I said, Dr. Reed, how long should these veneers last? Remember, this is 1987. He said, well, Gary, that depends on you. It depends on how well you take care of them at home. It depends on how faithful you are about keeping appointments with us so we can keep an eye on things and take care of you as well. And he said, if you're going to open beer bottles with those front teeth, all bets are off. And he did that intentionally to kind of lighten it up a little bit. But I like the way he answered it. It depends on you. Put some responsibility back on the patient. Depends on you. It depends on how well you take care of them at home. It depends how good you're doing with home care. It depends on how faithful you are about keeping your appointments here. But what he said in 1987 said, be thinking in terms of 10 to 12 years. And if we get longer than that, you're on bonus time. Well, I'm on bonus time still. Well, he knew they'd last longer than that, but I like the expectations. He set up a nice thought about expectations, didn't he?
Well, Gary, you could take that. It depends on you, and talk to every coaching client the exact same way. How long will it take me to get these results?
How successful?
How successful will I be?
Yeah, Dr. Moffet, how successful am I going to be with your help?
Well, it depends on you, Gary.
Me?
Depends on whether you listen, whether you act, and whether you're accountable to yourself and to me. Because without those three things, I can tell you, I can lecture till I'm blue in the face, but if you're not listening and you're not acting.
Words of wisdom right there.
Mm.
Your clients are fortunate to have your counsel and your wisdom.
Well, all coaching will work eventually if it's been proven once and been taught once, then it will work. Whether it's a match for people, though.
I'll speak to that. I've been an athlete most of my life and still an athlete, and I've had great coaches. But I remember early on, my coaches were often strict and said, do what I tell you to do and we'll get the results that you want. And I learned to listen and learned to be coachable. I mentioned to you that I'm training for my first Ironman competition coming up, and my Ironman coach is a fellow by the name of Lindsay Perry. Lindsay is from South Africa, and he is the Olympic marathon coach, South African Olympic marathon coach, and he's my coach. Virtually, we do this virtually, and I follow his instruction because he knows what he's doing.
Exactly.
It's not always easy, but he gives me something to do, and I just go do it.
One of my current clients says to me, David, I often just agree with you to shut you up, and then when I do it, I realize that you were right.
Got a backhanded compliment first there.
Well, yeah, it is, but I know the stuff works.
Yeah. Well, you've got the track record. You have the experience as well as a practitioner. You knew you can speak. That's the other advantage that I have as being a practice owner. I can speak as a practice owner because I was one.
And
you were
exactly
one.
Yes.
Been there. It's not academic. It's not ivory tower. It's not philosophical. It's real.
Well, we've had to make business decisions. Otherwise, there's no food on the table.
That's right.
Yeah.
Gary, our income
we've
was
hit
on
the
the line.
1 hour mark in this interview. You said you'd like to stop at 40 minutes for your podcast, but we've hit an hour and I'm going to have to draw the curtain on today. I know that we'll be talking again for sure because it is so easy to talk to you and you're a wealth of wisdom and I've only just scratched the surface today. Gary, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
I'll put two things. I'll put my email address. We'll put that in the show notes. So when you publish that, we'll put there. It's Gary at Takacs, my last name, Takacs, learningcenter.com. That's my personal email. I'd invite anybody listening to send me an email. Also share with you my cell number. You're welcome to publish that. My cell phone number. Welcome to share that. Text messaging works great with me. Those are two great ways to reach me personally is by my email address and by my cell. My cell number of course, using U.S. country code. But I'm
Gary, well, thank you very much again. It's been a pleasure. A long time since we've spoken, and even longer since we've seen each other face to face. We've got to do something about
we got to do
that.
something about that. We've got to connect. It's been great. I want to bring it back full circle. Thank you so much for the invitation. David, I love what you're doing. We have so many things in common, including a birth date that's just a few weeks apart. But thank you so much for all you've done for our amazing profession. Your podcast, I'm so glad that you jumped in the water and started podcasting, Ultimate Dental Podcast. And thanks for the invitation to be part of it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking with you, Gary. Thanks so much for being a guest on the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of our dental community and joining us each week on this incredible journey. If you found value in today's episode and you don't want to miss out on future episodes packed with expert insights and actionable strategies, here's how you can stay connected with us. Firstly, hit that subscribe button. Whether you're listening on your favorite podcast platform or watching on our website, subscribing ensures you'll never miss an episode. Secondly, share the love. If you know a fellow dentist or colleague who could benefit from the wisdom and knowledge that we share here, please share our podcast with them. Also, please share the podcast on your socials by simply clicking on the social icons wherever you view or listen to this podcast. Together, we can all do our bit to elevate the dental profession. And finally, stay engaged with us. We love hearing from you. Your questions, comments, and feedback fuel our mission to provide the best content for your professional growth, your personal growth, and for your practice growth. Remember, your journey to creating a dental practice and a business life that you love is our mission, and we're excited to be your trusted guide along the way. Thank you for being a part of the Ultimate Dental Podcast. Until next time, keep smiling, keep striving, and keep on tuning in to the Ultimate Dental Podcast.